Aliens watched in shock. Humans charged into fire for strangers. The fire alarm on my console screamed before I even finished my morning report. Red warning lights flooded the dim observation chamber of my vessel, and for a moment I could not breathe. My name is Kale Vorshun, and I have served as a senior observer for the Galactic Council for over 12,000 cycles. In all that time, I have never once felt my 3 hearts beat as fast as they did in that single moment. The sensors were showing an industrial fire on the surface of the small blue planet below us. The humans called it Earth. A chemical storage facility in one of their largest cities had suffered a massive failure. Flames were climbing hundreds of feet into the sky. Toxic smoke was spreading across entire neighborhoods. My instruments calculated that nearly 200 humans were trapped inside and around the burning complex. I leaned forward and zoomed my viewing screen closer. My junior observer, a young Ethari female named Tessra, rushed to my side. Her pale violet skin had turned almost white with shock. "Senior observer," she whispered, "the heat levels are beyond survivable. Those creatures down there have no protective gear. They will not last more than a few minutes if they remain close to the flames." I nodded slowly, already preparing to log this as a standard event. In my long career, I had watched 17 different species face similar disasters. Every single one of them reacted the same way. They ran. They fled. They saved themselves and left the trapped victims to their fate. This was the logical response. This was the rational response. This was the way sapient beings behaved across the entire galaxy. I opened my recording log and began to speak. Observation report, Cycle 47. The humans below us are experiencing a contained disaster event. I predict mass evacuation within the next 90 seconds. The trapped individuals will likely be abandoned, as is standard behavior for developing species under survival pressure. But then something happened that made me stop speaking mid-sentence. I saw movement on my screen, not away from the fire, toward it. A human male, perhaps 30 of their years old, was running directly into the burning building. He wore no special suit. He had no breathing equipment. He carried nothing but a wet cloth over his mouth. Behind him, another human followed, then a third, then 5 more. I froze. My 3 hearts all skipped at once. "Tessra," I said softly, "please recalibrate the sensors. They must be malfunctioning." "I already checked them twice, senior observer. The readings are accurate." I watched in silence as more humans appeared on my screen. Some were fully grown males. Some were females. A few of them were even elderly. They were running from every direction, converging on the burning structure like drops of water flowing toward a single pool. But none of them seemed related to the victims inside. I checked the data streams carefully. These were strangers, complete strangers. My screen zoomed in on one particular human. He was older than most, perhaps in his 50s, with gray hair and a slight limp. He reached the edge of the flames, paused for only a single heartbeat, and then plunged inside. A moment later, he emerged carrying a small human child in his arms. He handed the child to a waiting medic, coughed violently into his sleeve, and then turned around. He went back inside. "He is going in again," Tessra gasped. "Why is he going back? He already saved one. He has no duty to return." I had no answer for her. I had watched civilizations rise and fall. I had observed species that built great cities, species that traveled between worlds, species that mastered energies beyond imagination. But I had never in all my years seen anything like this. These humans were not soldiers. They were not trained rescuers. They were ordinary workers, shopkeepers, parents, teachers, and they were willingly walking into a place that would almost certainly claim them. A second human caught my attention. A young woman with dark hair tied back, no older than 25 cycles by my estimate. She was pulling an unconscious man twice her size across the burning ground. Her arms were shaking. Her face was black with soot. She slipped once, fell, and still kept dragging him forward. When other humans finally reached her and took the burden from her hands, she did not rest. She turned around and ran back toward the flames to look for someone else. I pressed a trembling claw against my forehead. In my training, I had studied every theory of sapient behavior. The Council's foundational rule stated that all intelligent species act primarily in their own interest. Cooperation beyond immediate family or tribe is rare and usually calculated. Self-sacrifice for complete strangers is considered a behavioral impossibility outside of very specific and limited conditions. But there was no rational calculation happening here. These humans were not being paid. They were not being forced. They were not expecting any reward. They were simply doing it. "Senior Observer," Tessera said quietly, "what should I write in the report?" I did not answer her for a long time. I kept watching the screen. I watched as a human father shielded a boy with his own body as a burning beam fell nearby. I watched as a woman used her own coat to smother flames on a stranger's back. I watched as two humans who had clearly just met picked up a third unconscious human between them and carried her out together. Every instinct I had trained for 12,000 cycles told me this could not be happening, but it was happening, right there, on my screen, over and over again. Finally I spoke. "Tessera, contact the main observation fleet. I want 3 more vessels positioned above this region immediately. I want every sensor, every camera, every recording device focused on this event. I need to understand what I am seeing." "Yes, Senior Observer, but our orders were clear. We are to remain cloaked and passive." "We are remaining cloaked. We are remaining passive. I am not interfering. I am observing." I paused. "I simply need more data." She hurried to her station. While she worked, I continued to watch. The older male with the gray hair and the limp had gone back into the fire 4 times now. 4 times. Each time he brought someone out. A young boy, an elderly woman, a teenage girl, a middle-aged man with a bleeding leg. Each time I thought he would finally stop. Each time I was wrong. On his 5th attempt, the building collapsed. I heard Tessera inhale sharply behind me. I myself did not move. I could not move. The great roof of the burning structure had caved inward, sending a terrible cloud of flame and debris rolling outward. The older male was gone, just like that. For several moments, the observation chamber was silent except for the soft hum of our machines. Then Tessera spoke, her voice cracking slightly. He knew. He had to know. After the 4th rescue, he must have known the building was unstable. Why did he go back in? I thought about the question for a long time. Then I gave the only answer I could give. I do not know. Below us, the fire continued to burn, and yet the humans did not stop coming. More of them arrived. Firefighters, medics, volunteers. Simple citizens carrying buckets of water. Children carrying blankets. Old men and women bringing food and water for the workers. A whole city was pouring itself into the disaster site, not to watch, not to record, but to help. I began a new log entry, but this time my voice was different. Observation report, revised. This observer is abandoning his earlier prediction regarding the human response to disaster events. The humans are not behaving according to any model currently in our database. Further observation is urgently required. I paused, then added one more sentence. Whatever these creatures are, they are not what we thought they were. As the sun set over the burning city, I ordered all 3 additional observation vessels to hold their positions. I told my crew to prepare for an extended mission. I would not be leaving this system anytime soon. I needed to see what else these humans were capable of. And deep inside, in a place I did not yet understand, I felt something stir that I had never felt before in all my long cycles of service. It was not fear. It was not curiosity. It was something closer to wonder, and I did not know if I should welcome it or be afraid of it. I only knew that I would not forget the face of the old man, with the gray hair, for as long as I lived. 3 weeks had passed since the fire, and I still had not slept properly. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the old man with the gray hair walking back into the flames. I saw the young woman dragging the unconscious stranger. I saw 100 faces, each one of them doing something that should have been impossible. My observation team had grown. 6 vessels now orbited Earth in complete silence, hidden behind advanced cloaking fields. My superiors at the Galactic Council had approved my request for extended study, though I could tell they were confused by my unusual level of interest. Senior observers were supposed to be calm, detached, and brief in their reports. I was becoming none of those things. I sat in my private chamber watching footage that my analyst team had collected. Tessera stood beside me, holding a data tablet filled with statistics that made no sense to either of us. "Senior observer," she said, "our database now contains over 4,000 documented cases of humans risking their own lives to help complete strangers. The time period is only 3 of their weeks." 4,000, I repeated. "Yes, and these are only the cases we have been able to confirm. The true number is likely much higher. Many of these events happen in private, without witnesses, without recordings." I leaned back in my chair. My 3 hearts felt heavy. "Play the next one, please." The screen changed. I saw a deep river in a cold northern country. The water was nearly frozen. A human child had fallen through the ice. Within seconds, a man walking nearby on the riverbank stripped off his heavy coat and jumped into the freezing water without any hesitation. The water was so cold that my sensors estimated he had perhaps 4 minutes before his body would stop functioning. He found the child. He lifted the small form up through the broken ice. He pushed the child toward another stranger who had arrived to help. Only after the child was safe did he try to climb out himself. His fingers were too numb. He could not grip the edge. 2 more strangers formed a chain, holding each other by the arms, and pulled him free. All 4 of them were complete strangers before that moment. "Next one," I whispered. A busy road. A small vehicle had collided with a larger truck. Flames were already beginning to show from the engine. I could see a woman trapped inside. 7 different humans ran toward the vehicle from different directions. A businessman in an expensive suit, a young delivery worker, an elderly couple, a teenage girl with a school bag. They did not know each other. They did not know the trapped woman. But they worked together, prying the door open with their bare hands until they pulled her free seconds before the vehicle caught fire completely. Next, a tall building on fire. A man on the 9th floor with a small pet in his arms. He was afraid to jump, but the flames were closing in. Below him, dozens of humans had gathered. They did not run away. Instead, they found a large piece of canvas from a nearby market stall. They held it stretched between them, shouting up at the man to jump. When he finally leapt, they caught him. Then they caught his pet. Then they disappeared back into the crowd without even waiting for thanks. Next, "Senior observer, there are thousands more. I can play them for days without repeating a single one." I held up my hand. "Stop, please stop for a moment." I stood up and walked to the viewing window of my chamber. Through it, I could see Earth slowly turning below us. A small, blue, beautiful thing. From this height, it looked so peaceful, so harmless. "Tessera, tell me honestly, have you ever, in any record for any species in the galaxy, seen behavior like this?" She was quiet for a long time. "No, senior observer. I have reviewed every database I have access to. The Vandari help each other, but only within their own tribes. The Kulan cooperate, but always for strategic gain. The Pelorians show kindness, but never at the cost of their own safety. The humans are different. They are completely different." "By how much?" She looked at her tablet. "Our analysts have calculated that the rate of what humans call selfless action is approximately 800 times higher than the next closest species in our records." 800 times? Yes. I let that number sit in my mind for a full minute. 800 times. The difference was not small. It was not a matter of adjustment or measurement error. It was a fundamental gap between humans and every other intelligent species the Galactic Council had ever studied. There was a soft chime behind me. My communications officer, a quiet male named Drell, stepped into the chamber. "Senior Observer, I have something urgent. It may change the direction of our mission." I turned to face him. "Speak." "Long-range sensors have detected a Vorn raiding fleet entering this sector. Their course is direct. They will arrive at this system within 42 standard days." My three hearts all stopped for a moment. The Vorn, everyone in the galaxy knew of the Vorn. They were not truly a civilization. They were closer to a plague. They traveled from one developing world to the next, stripping each planet of its resources, its population, its everything. No defenseless world had ever survived a Vorn harvest. Ever. "How many ships?" I asked. 14 cruisers, 3 heavy processing vessels, a full raiding force. And Earth has no defense against such a fleet. Their technology is centuries behind Vorn weaponry. "Correct, Senior Observer. Our models predict complete harvest within 6 days of their arrival." I looked back at the blue planet below me, at the cities full of lights, at the small, strange, beautiful creatures who ran into fires to save strangers, at the old man with the gray hair, at the children, at the families, at all of them. "Tessera," I said slowly, "what are our standing orders regarding pre-contact species under external threat?" She hesitated. "Observe and record. Do not interfere. The species must survive or fall by its own strength. This is the foundational rule of the Galactic Council." "Yes, that is the rule." "Senior Observer, are you?" "I am not proposing anything. I am only asking." But I was lying, even to her, even to myself. Something was already moving inside me that I could not name. For the next several days, I watched the humans more closely than ever. I saw a woman donate half her food to a homeless family she passed on the street. I saw a young boy stop his bicycle to help an elderly stranger carry groceries up 3 flights of stairs. I saw a firefighter rescue a cat from a drain pipe, even though it took him 2 full hours. I saw things that made me want to laugh, and things that made my eyes sting with a moisture I had not produced since I was very young. Then something happened that I had not expected. The humans detected the Vorn fleet. Their telescopes were primitive by our standards, but they were not useless. On the 20th day after my first warning, a team of human scientists at an observatory spotted unusual objects moving toward their system at impossible speeds. Within hours, governments across the planet were being briefed. Within a day, the news was everywhere. I expected panic. I expected the humans to fracture as they so often did. I expected riots, blame, collapse. Instead, something extraordinary happened. Leaders who had been enemies for decades began to speak to each other. I watched as presidents and prime ministers who had refused to share the same room for years now sat across the same table. I watched as ancient rivals set aside their disputes. I watched as humans, for perhaps the first time in their recorded history, stopped thinking of themselves as separate nations and started thinking of themselves as one species. The words that stood out most came from a female leader of a small country. She stood before a gathering of representatives from every nation on Earth and said something that my translator struggled to render. Finally, it gave me the closest approximation. "If the end is coming," she said, "then let it find us standing together. Let us not die as strangers. Let us die as a family." The chamber erupted in agreement. Old enemies clasped hands. Tears flowed freely. A species that had spent its entire history fighting itself was suddenly, in the face of annihilation, remembering that it was one single people. Tessera stood beside me watching the broadcast. She did something very unusual for an Ithari. She made a small sound, almost a whimper, and wiped her eye. "Senior Observer," she said, "we cannot let this happen. We cannot simply sit here and watch these creatures be harvested. Not after everything we have seen. Not after everything we know they are." I looked at her for a long moment. My junior officer, a young Athari who had been raised on the same rules I had been raised on, the same laws, the same traditions, the same belief that observers never, ever interfered. Tesra, I said, do you know what will happen to me if I break the non-interference directive? I do, senior observer. And do you know what will happen to you for following my orders? I do. And do you still ask this of me? She straightened her back. Her violet skin was steady now, no longer pale with fear. Yes, senior observer, I do. I turned back to the screen. The humans were still speaking. More leaders were joining the coalition. Engineers were being called in to design weapons they had never built before. Volunteers were signing up by the millions. A mother held her child and smiled at a woman she had never met before because they were both now preparing to stand together for the same cause. I closed my eyes. 12,000 cycles of service, a perfect record, a respected name, a career that would end the moment I did what my hearts were telling me to do. But my hearts were telling me something else too, something I had never heard them say before. They were telling me that some rules exist only until you see something that makes you understand they were always wrong. I opened my eyes. Drell, I said quietly, begin preparing the ship. We may have work to do soon. What kind of work, senior observer? I looked at Earth one more time. At the small blue planet that was teaching me things the galaxy had never bothered to learn. The kind that will change everything. The next 20 days passed faster than any I had ever lived. I watched humanity prepare for a fight they could not possibly win, and still they prepared without stopping. They did not rest. They did not complain. They did not surrender. They simply worked every hour of every day as if through sheer willpower they could bend reality into shape. Factories that had once made cars now produced defensive drones. Schools were converted into training centers. Hospitals were expanded. Children learned how to help medics. Old men who had retired decades ago returned to teach young people how to repair broken engines. Every human alive seemed to understand that they were part of something larger than themselves, and that understanding drove them harder than any fear could have. From my orbit high above, I watched it all and I recorded it all. My logs were growing larger every day. I no longer cared if they seemed unusual. Let the council read them. Let them see what I was seeing. Tesra kept me informed of the Vorn fleet's progress. Each report made my 3 hearts sink lower. The raiders were moving at full speed now. Their cruisers were armed with weapons the humans had no defense against. Their processing vessels were already preparing to harvest the planet below. On the 40th day, I sat alone in my observation chamber, staring at the tactical display. The Vorn would arrive in 2 more days. I had told no one yet what I was planning. I had not even fully admitted it to myself. A soft chime broke the silence. It was Tesra. Senior observer, I have something you need to see. It is not about the battle. It is about the humans. Bring it to me. She entered carrying a small data projector. She placed it on my table and activated it. A 3-dimensional image appeared in the air between us. It showed a large human structure, something they called a church. Inside, hundreds of humans from different faiths were gathered together. They are doing this all over the planet, Tesra said. Muslims praying beside Christians, Hindus beside Jews, atheists sitting quietly in the back. People who would have fought each other a year ago are now holding hands and sharing hope. I watched the image for a long time. An elderly woman was lighting a candle. A young man was helping a blind stranger find a seat. A small child was offering his stuffed toy to another child who was crying. These were moments of such simple kindness that I almost missed their significance. But I did not miss it, not anymore. I had learned to see these things now. Tesra, I said softly, have you ever wondered if the council was wrong? She looked at me with wide eyes. Wrong about what, senior observer? Wrong about everything. Wrong about what intelligence means. Wrong about what advancement means. Wrong about what makes a civilization worthy of the stars. She did not answer, but I saw in her eyes that she had wondered exactly that. I stood up. I walked to the command console. I placed my claw on the control that would activate the ship's primary communication array. I hesitated there for only a moment. Then I pressed it. This is Senior Observer Kale Vorshan of the Galactic Council vessel Silent Horizon, broadcasting on open frequency to the governments and peoples of Earth. We have been observing your world for many cycles. We have seen what you are. We know what is coming, and we are not going to stand by and watch you fall alone. I paused. My 3 hearts were pounding. Once I said the next words, I could never take them back. We are coming to help. I cut the transmission. Tessera was staring at me with her mouth open. Senior Observer, she whispered, you have just ended your career. I know. You may have just ended your life. The Council does not treat violations of the non-interference directive lightly. I know. I will stand with you. Whatever they do to you, they will do to me also. I looked at her. Young Tessera, who had come aboard my vessel as a nervous new officer only a few cycles ago. Now she was standing tall, her violet skin flushed with determination, her eyes steady and clear. Thank you, Tessera, but this was my decision. You do not need to share the burden. I already have, Senior Observer. I chose to share it the moment I decided not to report you. Before I could respond, the communication array came alive. Hundreds of human signals were flooding into our ship at once. They had heard my message. Now they were all trying to answer. I selected one at random. A human male appeared on my screen. He wore the uniform of what I had learned was a military coalition leader. His face was lined with exhaustion. His eyes were wet. This is Admiral Henry Parker of the United Earth Defense Council. Are you really offering to help us? I am Admiral Parker. My ship carries technology that your forces do not yet have. Sensors that can see the Vorn fleet clearly. Jamming systems that can disrupt their weapons. I offer all of this to you. Why? He asked. The question was not aggressive. It was sincere. Why would you break your own laws to help a species you have never met? I thought about the old man with the gray hair. I thought about the woman in the freezing river. I thought about the mother and child in the burning building. Because, I said slowly, I have watched your people for many weeks now, and I have learned that some things in the galaxy are worth more than laws. Your people are one of those things. He was silent for a long moment, then he gave a small nod. Then on behalf of all humanity, we accept your help. Over the next 36 hours, I worked with human commanders in ways I had never imagined working with any pre-contact species. We shared tactical data. We exchanged technology specifications. My crew and I poured every piece of useful information we had into their hands. We gave them everything we could give without actually firing a shot ourselves. Then something happened that stopped me cold. A new signal appeared on my sensors. Another Galactic Council vessel was entering the system. They have found us, Tessera said tensely. The Council is coming to stop us. But when the signal identified itself, it was not an enforcement ship. It was Observer Melan Vrexis of the Melanar species. Her ship had been monitoring a different star system far away. Kale, her voice came through my console, I heard your transmission. I have been watching a world in my own sector where similar behaviors have been recorded. I have chosen to follow your lead. I am joining you. Another signal, Observer Sukvash of the Kutan. Then another, a young Pelorian observer named Threll. One by one, over the next day, 4 more Council vessels broke protocol and came to Earth. Each of them had been watching worlds with small pockets of similar behavior. Each of them had been quietly questioning everything they believed. Each of them had been waiting, perhaps without knowing it, for someone else to be brave first. By the time the Vorn fleet arrived, 6 Galactic Council vessels stood alongside Earth's defense force. The humans had gathered every ship they had, every fighter, every cruiser, every armed vessel, many of them barely finished being built. They stood in formation between the Vorn fleet and their planet. I watched from my bridge as the first Vorn cruiser came into range. My sensors tracked its weapons charging. My crew prepared countermeasures. Tessera stood beside me, her claws trembling slightly but her face calm. Senior Observer, whatever happens next, I am honored to serve with you. And I with you, Tessera. The battle began. Vorn weapons fire cut through space. Human ships moved to intercept. My vessel provided jamming signals that scrambled the Vorn targeting systems. Our combined fleet struck back with everything we had. I watched in amazement as human pilots performed actions no training manual could have prepared them for. A young woman in a small fighter, her call sign was Warden, flew her ship in impossible patterns through Vorn defensive fire. She destroyed a cruiser single-handed, using tactical data I had fed directly to her console. Afterward, her voice came through my channel, laughing through tears. "Thank you, friend. When this is over, I am buying you a drink." Friend, the word hit me in a way no word ever had before. But the battle was not going well. Even with our help, the Vorn were too powerful. Their cruisers cut through human defenders one after another. I saw a human transport vessel, unarmed, carrying 300 evacuees from a space station, come under direct Vorn fire. What happened next is something I will remember until I am no longer alive. 4 human pilots from 4 different nations, who had been enemies only a year before, turned their fighters toward the incoming Vorn attack. They knew their ships were not fast enough to intercept in time. They knew what they had to do. They formed a wall of their own vessels between the transport and the Vorn fire. They absorbed every blast meant for the evacuees. None of them survived. The transport escaped safely. 300 humans were alive, because 4 strangers had decided they were worth dying for. I sat on my bridge with tears sliding down my face. Actual tears. The first I had produced in nearly 1,000 cycles. Beside me, Tessera was weeping openly. Even Drell, my stoic communications officer, was wiping his eyes. Then something shifted in the battle that no one had expected. The Vorn commander's ship, tracking our sensors, sent a transmission to his fleet. I intercepted it easily. My translator gave me his words. "These creatures do not fight for land. They do not fight for metal. They do not fight for treasure. They fight for each other. There is no victory here. Withdraw, withdraw immediately." The Vorn fleet turned. The Vorn fleet ran. I could not believe what I was seeing. Ancient raiders, veterans of 1,000 harvested worlds, were retreating from a fight they could have still won, because they could not understand an enemy that would rather die for strangers than live for themselves. Humanity had not beaten them with weapons. Humanity had beaten them with something the galaxy had forgotten existed. On my bridge, my crew and I sat in stunned silence as the enemy ships disappeared into deep space. Then Tessera began to laugh, and then to cry, and then to laugh again. Drell clasped my arm with a grip stronger than I knew he had. I looked at them both and felt something I had never felt in all my long life. I felt proud, not of myself, of them, of the humans, of all of us. But my moment of joy was cut short by a new signal on my long-range sensors. Many signals. Many, many signals. I stared at the display with my heart sinking once again. "Senior Observer," Drell said quietly, "the Galactic Council High Chamber is on approach. Not just one enforcement ship. Not 10. The entire council, every senior representative, every judge, every ancient leader." "How long until they arrive?" I asked. 6 hours, Senior Observer." Tessera looked at me. "They are coming for you." "Yes." "They are coming for all of us." "Yes." I took a deep breath. I had saved a world. I had broken every rule that mattered. I had started something that could not be undone. Now I would face the consequences. The 6 hours passed faster than I wanted them to. I sat quietly in my chamber, reviewing every recording I had made, every moment of human kindness, every act of sacrifice, every face. I was not preparing a legal defense. I was preparing a testimony. If this was to be the end of my career, then at least the truth of what I had witnessed would be spoken, one way or another. Tessra came to me with food I could not eat. She did not try to comfort me with words. She simply sat beside me in silence. It was, I realized, the kind of companionship I had only recently learned existed. The humans had a word for it. They called it friendship. The council flagship arrived exactly when Drell had predicted. It was the unending judgment, the largest vessel in council service. I had seen it only twice in my career, and both times from a great distance. To see it now filling my entire viewing screen made my 3 hearts feel small. A formal summons came through my console. I was to report to the main chamber of the flagship within 30 minutes. A human representative was also invited to attend. When I relayed this message to Admiral Parker, he informed me that humanity had already chosen who would stand for them. Her name was Amelia Brooks. She was not a military leader. She was not a politician. She was a simple teacher from a small town in a country called Ireland. During the fire 3 months ago, she had been one of the first to run into the burning building. She had rescued 4 children before suffering serious injuries to her hands and face. She had become, without trying to, a symbol of what humanity meant when it spoke about itself. When I met her at the transport bay, I saw a small human female with bandages still on her hands and pink scarring on one cheek. Her eyes were tired but bright. She walked toward me without any sign of fear, though I must have seemed strange and frightening to her. "You must be Observer Vorshun," she said, extending her hand. I had studied human customs. I knew this gesture. I carefully placed my claw in her small hand, making sure to be gentle. She squeezed it firmly. "Thank you," she said. "Whatever happens today, thank you for what you did for my people." "I only did what was right," I answered. "That is always the hardest thing to do," she said softly. "That is why it matters." Together we boarded the transport that took us to the unending judgment. Tessra accompanied us, along with the other observers who had joined my cause. Melin Vrexis walked beside me with her tall Melinar posture. Sukvash of the Khotan kept her head high. Young Threll of the Pelorians, who had joined me last and had the most to lose in terms of career, showed no regret in his expression. We walked together into the great chamber where we would be judged. The High Arbiter sat at the center of the chamber. She was a Ilari, one of the most ancient species in the galaxy. Her kind lived for many thousands of cycles and showed no emotion in any situation. Around her sat 23 other council members, representing species from every corner of known space. Behind them, thousands of observers watched from tiered seating, silent and still. The chamber was colder than any place I had ever been, not in temperature, in feeling. The High Arbiter began to speak. Her voice was dry and ancient. "Senior Observer Kale Vorshun, you stand accused of violating the non-interference directive. You have made contact with a pre-council species. You have provided military assistance in a conflict you had no authorization to enter. You have encouraged other observers to follow your example, resulting in the largest coordinated breach of directive in the history of this council. How do you respond?" I stepped forward. My 3 hearts were calm now. I had made my peace with whatever came next. "I do not deny any of these charges, High Arbiter. I did all of these things. I did them knowing what I was doing. I did them knowing the consequences. I would do them again." A murmur ran through the chamber. The High Arbiter silenced it with a single raised hand. "Explain yourself." I looked around the chamber. At the faces of species I had respected all my life. At the representatives of civilizations whose wisdom I had been taught to honor. For 12,000 cycles I have served this council. I have believed in its rules. I have obeyed its laws. I have trusted that its foundations were built on the highest principles of our shared galaxy. And then I encountered humanity. And I learned that our foundations, however tall they have grown, are missing something at their very base. I turned and looked at Amelia Brooks. She stood quietly watching me. This is Amelia Brooks. She is a teacher of young human children. 3 months ago, a fire consumed a large building in her city. She was walking past when it happened. She did not know anyone inside. She had no obligation to enter. She did so anyway. She rescued 4 children. She was injured. She has scars that will remain on her face for the rest of her life. She did not ask for any reward. She did not even give her name to those she saved. When I asked her why, she told me she did not think about it. She simply did it. I raised my claws and activated the projector I had brought. The chamber filled with images. I showed them the old man with the gray hair. I showed them the woman in the freezing river. I showed them the 4 pilots who had blocked the attack on the transport. I showed them the mothers and fathers and children and strangers who had done impossible things for each other. I showed them everything I had seen. Species, I said, has no special abilities. They are not stronger than us. They are not faster. They live shorter lives than nearly any species in this chamber. By every measurement we have used for thousands of cycles, they are unremarkable. And yet they have something none of us have. They have the ability to look at a stranger in danger and see themselves. They have the ability to run toward fire without calculating the cost. They have the ability to fight and to die for beings they have never met. I paused. The chamber was completely silent. We have been watching the galaxy grow cold and distant for millennia. We have measured civilizations by their technology and their power, and in doing so, we have forgotten what the measure of a civilization truly is. It is not what it builds. It is what it saves. It is not what it conquers. It is what it protects. Humanity understands this. We do not anymore. I lowered my claws. I broke your law because your law was asking me to watch something precious die. I will not apologize for that. I ask only that you see what I have seen. Watch the images, read the reports, and then decide if what I did was truly a crime. I stepped back. The High Arbiter sat motionless for a long moment. Then she turned to Amelia Brooks. Teacher Brooks, do you wish to speak for your people? Amelia stepped forward. She was much smaller than every being in the chamber. Her voice, when she spoke, was soft but steady. High Arbiter, Council members, thank you for allowing me to stand here. I am not a leader of my species. I am not a diplomat. I am just a person who teaches children how to read and write. I was chosen to speak for humanity because my people wanted you to hear from someone ordinary, someone simple, because we are all, in the end, ordinary and simple. She took a breath and continued. I do not come to ask you to admit us into your council. I do not come to beg for protection. I come to offer you something instead. My people have made many mistakes. We have hurt each other. We have fought wars. We have broken promises. We are not perfect. We have never been perfect. But we have learned something along the way, and we would like to share it with you if you will let us. She looked around the chamber slowly, meeting the eyes of as many beings as she could. We have learned that strength without kindness is just cruelty. We have learned that intelligence without empathy is just calculation. We have learned that a civilization that cannot weep for a stranger is not really a civilization at all. We are not asking for your help. We are asking if you would like to learn alongside us, not as students, not as teachers, as companions. She stepped back and bowed slightly. The chamber remained silent. For a very long time, no one spoke. The High Arbiter did not move. Around the chamber, I could see ancient faces, faces of species that had lived for thousands of years, studying the images I had projected. Some were reading my reports on their data tablets. Some were simply staring into the space in front of them, lost in thoughts I could only guess at. Finally, the High Arbiter raised her eyes. She looked directly at me, and then, to my astonishment, she looked at Amelia Brooks. For 15,000 cycles, the High Arbiter said slowly. "I have presided over this chamber. I have heard many cases. I have rendered many verdicts. I have never in all that time doubted the wisdom of our foundational laws." She paused. Her ancient face, which had shown no emotion for centuries, showed something now. It was small. It was subtle, but it was there. Until today. The chamber held its breath. "Senior Observer Kale Vorshan, you broke our law. That cannot be denied. But the law you broke was built upon an assumption that no civilization would be worth breaking it for. You have shown us that this assumption was incomplete. You have shown us something our own records never recorded. You have shown us a species whose very existence challenges the foundations of our understanding." She raised her hand. "The charges against Senior Observer Kale Vorshan and his fellow observers are suspended. The non-interference directive is placed under immediate review, and humanity is not invited into this council as a candidate species awaiting evaluation." She paused again. The weight of what she was about to say filled the entire chamber. "Humanity is invited as teachers." The chamber erupted. Some beings stood in protest. Others sat in stunned silence. Many, to my surprise, bowed their heads in what I recognized as the Ilari gesture of respectful submission. Amelia Brooks herself simply stood very still, tears running down her scarred cheek. The High Arbiter continued. "We have grown cold, my fellow council members. We have measured ourselves against each other for so long that we have forgotten what there was to measure. These small, short-lived creatures have rediscovered something we had lost. We will not turn them away. We will listen. We will watch. We will learn. And perhaps, in time, we will remember who we once were before the stars made us proud." Then the High Arbiter did something no one in that chamber had ever seen. She stood up. She walked down from her high seat. She crossed the floor, and she stopped in front of Amelia Brooks. The tiny human looked up at the ancient being who had ruled the galaxy for more than 100 human lifetimes. The High Arbiter extended a single long claw. "Teacher Brooks," she said, "on behalf of the Galactic Council, I welcome you and your people. May we become worthy of the lesson you have brought us." Amelia Brooks took the claw in her small hand. "Thank you," she whispered. "We will try to become worthy of you as well." The chamber, for perhaps the first time in its history, broke into applause. I stood behind Amelia, watching, with 3 hearts so full I thought they might burst. Beside me, Tessra was openly weeping. Melon Vrexis placed her long arm across my shoulder. Sukvash bowed her head and whispered something in her own ancient language that I believe was a prayer of thanks. Years later, I would stand on a beach on Earth with Amelia Brooks beside me. She had become a counselor by then, one of the first humans to represent her species on the galactic stage. We had traveled together to 17 different worlds. We had helped negotiate 4 peace agreements between species that had hated each other for thousands of years. Each time, Amelia had simply done what she always did. She had reminded them that beneath all their differences, beneath all their technologies and histories and old hatreds, they were all capable of looking at a stranger and seeing themselves. The galaxy was changing. Slowly, carefully, it was relearning something it had forgotten long ago. And at the heart of that change was a small blue planet filled with strange, fragile, magnificent creatures who ran into fires to save people they had never met. On that beach, watching the sun set over Earth's great ocean, I recorded my final log entry as an observer. For 12,000 cycles, I cataloged the galaxy. I searched for its greatest civilizations. I believed they would be found in towers that touched the stars, in weapons that could unmake worlds, in knowledge that spanned the ages. I looked in all the wrong places. The greatest civilization is not the one whose buildings reach the highest. It is the one whose smallest child, seeing a stranger in flames, runs toward the fire. I have spent my life watching. Today, I begin to learn. I closed the recording. Amelia looked at me and smiled. "Was that a good ending?" she asked. I thought about it for a moment. Then I smiled back in the way I had learned to smile from watching her people. No, I said, it was a good beginning. And somewhere far above us, in the deep black of space, I imagined that an old man with gray hair and a slight limp was finally resting. Because his lesson had been learned. And the galaxy would never be the same.